दोनों गेस्ट आ गए हैं।
हाँ, यस सर। Sir, shall we start?
Just wait for a moment. I'm just. Ramgopal ji, is the list is over? Ramgopal ji.
Some participants are joining the session, so
Okay.
I think we can start.
Okay, because the second speaker is trying, but there is no electricity and the network connectivity issue is there in the Kolkata. Maybe
Okay.
we'll join later on. So now I request Dr. Purva ma'am to start formally the webinar. Over to Dr. Purva
Okay,
ma'am.
sir. Okay, sir. First of all, I want to request all the participants, kindly do not present your screen as it disturbs all other participants. Please do not present your screen. We will start with our webinar. With the warm greetings to everyone, myself, Purva Sanjay Sabnis, Assistant Professor, Computer Science Department, School of Management Sciences, Varanasi, extend my warm welcome to the respected dignitaries and all the participants. I hope all of you are safe and keeping up with the latest on COVID-19. As we know, the current scenario is tough, unprecedented, and so are the challenges to the academia. As Rabindranath Tagore once said, faith is the bird that feels the light when dawn is still dark. Now, the darkness that looms over the world at this moment is the curse of COVID-19 pandemic. While the bird of human freedom finds itself caged under lockdown and unable to fly. Enthused by the beacon of hope, human beings will soon start picking up the pieces of a shared future for the humanity. But perhaps it will only be to find new unfamiliar world order for reaching consequences for us that transcend society, politics, and economy. The pandemic due to COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown has forced us to come up with the innovative ideas and solutions to disseminate the knowledge. School of Management Sciences Varanasi, being a premier institute in the country, always like to take new challenges. Therefore, we have initiated a series of webinars for the greater interest of academic community. Today, we gather here on this platform for a next webinar on the topic relevance of artificial intelligence and machine learning in post-COVID era. As you know, artificial intelligence and machine learning both are the current issues in the computer science era. Artificial intelligence is nothing but machine intelligence which associates with human mind and learn them problem solving. And on the other, machine learning is an application of artificial intelligence that provides systems the ability to automatically develop computer program, access the data, and use it to learn for themselves. However, the goal of artificial intelligence is to make a smart computer system like humans to solve the complex problems. And in the today's webinar, we will get the knowledge of relevance of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the post-COVID era. I would like to request Dr. P.N. Jha sir, Director of the Institute, to grace the audience with welcome address. Sir, please.
Hello, friends. Esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Samrat Paul, Consultant, TCS, Kolkata, Dr. Pinaki Chakrabarti, Assistant Professor, Netaji Subhas University of Technology, New Delhi, our Institute's Executive Secretary, Dr. M.P. Singh, who is also expected to join us, my friend and coordinator of the program, Professor Kamalsheel Misra, my administrative colleague and registrar, Mr. Sanjay Gupta, my other academic and administrative, my very dear student who might be participating today in this program, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and a very hearty welcome to all of you. Friends, the program of webinar, as my colleague Dr. Purva Sanjay Sabnis has just now told you, it has been organized on a very contemporary issue, relevance of artificial intelligence and machine learning in post-COVID era by the webinar forum of School of Management Sciences, Varanasi, a very well-known name under the umbrella of higher education. SMS Varanasi, as a center of excellence, has always been in the news and in the mind of the people because the institution provides one of the best learning experience in the academic areas of MBA, PGDM, MCA, MCOM, BBA, BCA, BCom Honors and BCom Plain, and BA Mass Communication. This NAC A-graded institution and equally occupying a very higher slot on the continuum of top 50 schools of the country, has presently been passing through its silver jubilee year. This institution is endowed with a very unique salience in as much as it is equipped with a very exemplary grit of regularly publishing 4 biannual journals, which in itself has been a record in this part of the country for any standalone institution. And among them, one of our journals is Scopus Indexed also. This institution is highly socially sensitive, and friends, as a part of its social hortatory obligations only, that today's webinar and earlier a series of webinars have been organized by our friends at SMS Varanasi. At this auspicious occasion, at this exuberant time, I would like to extend a very warm and hearty welcome to all of you to our institution's forum. Today, the talk of the day or evening or night is only COVID-19. You know, it is becoming a commonplace, not only in India, but in more than 180 countries. Because you might be knowing that after its emergence from its epicenter, China, this COVID-19 has so far taken into its monstrous grip so many countries, and they have been very severely affected on almost all the fronts relating to human beings and human endeavor. The personal front, the social front, the psychological front, the religious front, political front, and the worst affected is our economic front. You know, the cascading impact of this deadly disease, a natural calamity, COVID-19, and especially its lingering stay with us and other countries for the past 3-4 months. This has been seen in the way that we have been made to experience one of the most brutal global equity collapse since the Great Depression. And today, you might be knowing that the stock market has already fallen by more than 20%. So entire economy has come at the verge of devastation. It has very directly impacted the job market, the livelihood, the health, the nutrition. As per one current estimation, it is expected that on account of this coronavirus, a loss of $77 million to $347 million would be accounted on the front of global economy. Recently, on the economic front, a very well-known and famous rating agency, CARE, it has come out with its estimation in regard to the GDP growth rate, and it has suggested that this financial year we may have to experience the GDP growth rate as 1.1% only. So this kind of historical new low we have been made to experience, and if unfortunately the lockdown continues further, this economy is almost fully slated to take a further downward drift. Friends, in this situation, we have to be ready for a resurgence, for a full-time restructuring and revitalization. And there would be multiple deployment of this AI, this artificial intelligence. I think you might be knowing that so far we have got the track of 4 industrial revolutions in the world. And every industrial revolution generating in 1 century, they have gifted us very precious things. The first industrial revolution, which came around 1784, gave us steam engine, mechanical power. The second revolution came around 1870 in the 19th century, latter part. It has given us electricity. Then the third revolution came in 1969, and it gifted us with internet. And now, in this 21st century, we are being gifted with the 4th industrial revolution, IR4. And the gift which it has presented to us, among them, this AI, I think it is one of the most important gifts, because it has pervaded and invaded almost all sorts of community and people in the world. I don't think that there are some persons who might not be using that, he or she has been using it, but knowingly or unknowingly, whosoever has been using the internet or the smartphone, those persons have been involved and deploying this AI. And my friend Purva Sanjay Sabnis has introduced you the basics of the AI. As a layman, what I feel, that this kind of intelligence, which earlier was only the sole property of the human beings as a natural gift, now it has been juxtaposed on the machines in a simulated form, and the machines are now trying to replace several human hours. It has made a pervasive presence in the entire technology industry. It has solved very important problems in the area of computer sciences, software engineering, as well as operations research. But as a common man, 2 issues are there in my mind, which I would like to be included in your deliberation so that these concerns will be addressed. Number 1, this is the aspect of the negative side of the technology. You know, every technology has got certain negative point also. So this artificial intelligence is also associated with certain risk. It carries the potential also to provide mass unemployment in the society if its use remains unabated like this and the progress remains as it is. Second thing is, related thing is that we have started depending more and more upon this machine learning and this artificial intelligence. I afraid, and several persons like me may afraid, that a time would come that the new breed of even the highly educated people would find it difficult to correctly spell the spellings of so many complicated words. Because once they come out of the practice, they start depending fully on the machines. Their natural intelligence would be gradually evaded. So this is the issue, and there, what would be the fate and fortune of the intelligence quotient, you can understand. The second thing related to this AI, I feel that presently you might have listened to Honorable Prime Minister and so many intermediaries of the Government of India through the ministers, that they have always been persuading and asking us to be self-reliant. Today, we are depending heavily upon the imports in regard to so many raw materials and the management and regulation of so many finished goods from China, the epicenter of the problem. And in the event of this disease, this COVID-19, the countries have started restraining on the imports. It means that when we have got no dearth of the talent and intelligence, we shall have to develop ourselves and would try to become self-reliant on these parts also, so that in the coming days, when there would be more and more deployment in the rejuvenation of the nation on the economic front through the use of the technology, we shall not be lagging behind anybody. I once again extend a very warm welcome to our honorable guests and all the listeners, and wish the program a grand success and meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your warm words. Before starting with our session, I want to request all the participants to kindly cooperate with us by following some instructions. If you have not written yet your name, organization, and designation, kindly put it into the chat box. All participants are kindly mute your microphone throughout the session. If you have any query, put it into the chat box. There is question answer session at the end of the webinar. And most important request is, please do not present your screen throughout the session. It disturbs a lot for other participants. And last one, we are going to provide the feedback form in the last part of the webinar. Kindly fill it in order to get e-certificate for attending this webinar. Please follow these all instructions and kindly cooperate with us. For the today's webinar, we have two eminent personalities with us, Dr. Pinaki Chakrabarti and Mr. Samrat Paul. It's my great privilege to introduce all of you today's first resource person, Dr. Pinaki Chakrabarti. He has completed BTech from Indraprastha University and MTech and PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, all in computer engineering. Currently, he is working as assistant professor in Netaji Subhash University of Technology, New Delhi. His specializing subjects are compiler construction and operating systems. He has published more than 40 research papers and serves as a reviewer of 5 reputed international journals. Sir, we are happy that you are with us. Now, I would like to introduce second resource person also, Mr. Samrat Paul. He is consultant at Tata Consultancy Services, Kolkata. His area of work is data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cloud computing. He has 13 years of experience with data science, big data analytics, solution architecture design skills. He also worked in the area of requirement gathering, estimation, design development, database designing, and integration. He is also expert in data structure and concurrency programming on the Java. Right now, he is not present with us. We are communicating with him. He will join us soon. Till I request Dr. Pinaki sir kindly start with the session. Sir, please.
Thank you, Purva ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And Namaskar, Pinaki Nath sir. I am glad that your and my name matches so much. Okay, so I
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll share my screen. Please confirm if you can see that. I'll just share my PPT. Present now. Window. Share. Purva, can you see my whole screen?
No, sir. Yes, sir. Abhi yes.
So you
Yes.
can see my whole screen. So should I
Yes.
start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everybody, especially the professors of School of Management Sciences and other, eminent academicians from all over the country and maybe from abroad also. I am extremely glad that Professor Kamal sir and the School of Management Sciences, Varanasi, has invited me to this webinar. And the topic is very interesting and challenging also. The relevance of AI and ML in the post-COVID era. Well, this COVID, as Purva ma'am was saying, is an unprecedented thing. The lockdowns are also unprecedented in our lifetime. So this is a very challenging time, and to be honest, nobody knows what is going to happen in what we are calling the post-COVID era. We do not know what is going to happen during this COVID lockdowns. I mean, during this last 1 or 2 months, I had been doing some experiments. I would like to share my okay, I'd like to share my preliminary results with you today, and I believe that my results will be relevant in the post-COVID era also. Well, in the last 2 months, I have been working on detecting addictive use of digital technologies using artificial intelligence. Before this COVID pandemic, we were using digital technologies. We were using our smartphones. We are using internet. We are using laptops for last many years. Since our childhood, we have been using. But during the last 2 months, we are using these digital technologies more than anything else, more than ever, before. So with overuse, with excessive use, also comes addiction. Use is good, addictive use is not a very good thing. So we are trying to detect and perhaps solve these addictive use of technologies with the help of AI. Now, today I'd like to say a few things about history and philosophy of artificial intelligence. I would like to share my views on artificial intelligence, and then I'll talk about 2 of my ongoing experiments. One is to detect nomophobia, and the other is to detect binge tweeting during this COVID lockdown. As you can see from this slide, I am a megalomaniac and egocentric person. I would like to talk about my own experiments and own views only. Okay. About 200 years ago, in England, there was one gentleman called Charles Babbage. He was a mathematician by education. He studied in the University of Cambridge. And Charles Babbage was interested in building a machine which he called the analytical engine, which would be able to perform different sorts of computation. According to today's terminology, analytical engine is a computer. So Charles Babbage was trying to develop such a computer 200 years ago with whatever technologies he had to his disposal. At that time, there was one lady, again in England, Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace was trying to write a program. She was trying to develop a technique
to calculate Bernoulli's number using Charles Babbage's analytical engine. Basically, or in other words, we can say that Charles Babbage was trying to develop a computer and Ada Lovelace was trying to write a program for him. Charles Babbage, unfortunately, was not able to complete his computer during his lifetime, and Ada Lovelace's program was never executed. Nonetheless, Ada Lovelace's program or her logic was correct, and as a result, even today, she is considered to be a pioneer of computer science, and many people, including me, would like to call her the first computer programmer. Now, what was Ada Lovelace's view on artificial intelligence? She told about 150 or 200 years back that a computer or a machine can do only what it has been programmed for and cannot be creative. So here we have Ada Lovelace, who is saying that a computer cannot think, a computer cannot be creative, a computer cannot recommend you books, movies, or a computer cannot play chess. So that was Ada Lovelace 200 years ago. So 100 years passed by, actual computers were built in USA, in UK, in different parts of the world. And then there was another English gentleman named Alan Matheson Turing. That was about 100 years back. Turing was again revisiting that question. Can computers think? Alan Turing asked that question. Can computers think? Well, Turing said, yes, computers can be made to think. So that was Turing's version. Computers can be made to think. If computers are to think, if computers happen to think, then computers must have some form of intelligence, or which we call the artificial intelligence. Just 5 minutes back, Professor Pinakinath Jha sir was saying that, earlier thinking, intelligence was the copyright of human beings only. Now, as Alan Turing is saying, even computers can think. So computers are simulating the human brains in some form. So that is artificial intelligence. Now, what is this artificial intelligence? Well, we are computer engineers. I believe many of you are computer engineers. Purva madam, I believe, is a computer engineer. And well, we write computer programs. Now, what are these computer programs? In a computer program, we write the computer has to follow to solve a numerical task. So we are writing the steps in a formal notation that we are calling computer program. The computer has to execute those steps one by one, and thus a numerical problem is solved. So here the human being is telling the computer what steps it has to follow. So that is a conventional computer program, and such a program has absolutely zero intelligence. But a program can have artificial intelligence. We can give some artificial intelligence to a program also. How? A program is said to possess artificial intelligence if it can decide which steps to follow once it has been provided with the goals and the constraints of the numerical task. Now look here carefully. Here we are not telling the steps to the computer anymore. We are just telling the goal of the task. We are telling what is the goal of the task, and we are telling the rules and the constraints of the task. And then the program is automatically calculating its own steps. The computer, the program is deciding its own steps and executing those steps, and that is how it is solving a numerical task. If a program can do that, then we call that program an intelligent program. Okay, and if a computer can execute such intelligent programs, well, it has artificial intelligence. Actually, this term artificial intelligence is quite old. Alan Turing never used this term artificial intelligence, although Turing did a lot of work on artificial intelligence, the theoretical background of artificial intelligence. The term artificial intelligence was coined by Professor John McCarthy in the year 1955. This is Professor John McCarthy, again, one of the pioneers of computer science. He developed the programming language called Lisp. He was a professor first at MIT, then at Stanford University, and one of the pioneers of computer science and artificial intelligence. He coined the term artificial intelligence way back in 1955. Now, how we can achieve this artificial intelligence? How we can provide artificial intelligence to our programs? Well, for that we use soft computing. We use soft computing to provide to implement artificial intelligence. Soft computing is the use of specialized techniques to find inexact solutions to NP-complete and other computationally intensive problems. There are many problems in the real world for which we can write computer programs, but we can write algorithms and we can implement those algorithms in computer programs. However, those computer programs will be very slow. Okay, they will be very slow. They will take a lot of time. You will not be able to solve those problems in the real time. Okay, so if we are trying to find out the exact solutions. However, if you are okay with approximate solutions, if you are okay with inexact solutions, then you should go for artificial intelligence. You can use soft computing techniques, and the soft computing techniques will give you a good inexact solution. It will give you some good working approximate solutions. They will not be the perfect solutions, but in many domains, such solutions are acceptable. So if we are working on such a domain, then we should and we do use soft computing techniques. Now, over the last 50 years or so, different types of soft computing techniques have been developed. I personally like to classify these soft computing techniques into three basic categories. Number one, machine learning. Now, machine learning can be implemented in different ways. Two commonly used techniques for implementing machine learning is support vector machines, abbreviated as SVMs, or artificial neural networks, or ANN. Today, ANNs are used in a large number of domains, and different types of ANNs have been devised, like RNN, CNN, deep neural networks, etc. So these are artificial neural networks and support vector machines can be used to implement machine learning, which is one of the three techniques for achieving AI. Now, in our childhood, in our schools, we have studied set theory. It used to be a very interesting topic in those days. Now, over the years, some scientists have modified the set theory. Okay. And this can be also used to achieve artificial intelligence. Now, there are two well-known techniques. One is fuzzy logic, which was proposed by Professor Lotfi-Zadeh, an American scientist of Iranian descent. And the other way to modify set theory is the concept of rough sets, which was proposed by one Polish scientist named Professor Pawlak. Okay, so these two techniques modify the set theory concepts and achieve artificial intelligence. Now, we are computer engineers. We live in the nature. We live in New Delhi. We live in Varanasi. We live in Kolkata, and we see the nature around us. This nature, the biological and physical processes going on in the nature, it motivates us, and so with this type of natural motivations, some computer engineers have come up with or proposed what we call evolutionary computing techniques. Now, what are these evolutionary computing techniques? Anything which is any AI-based techniques which are inspired by biology or physics. For example, we have something called genetic algorithms. Now, these are algorithms which somehow mimic the concept of genetics, biological genetics. Again, we have swarm intelligence. Now, in swarm intelligence, we have a large number of simple, small agents which are cooperating among each other. They are simple agents, but there are large in number. There is a number of them, and together they have some formidable intelligence. Now, the swarm intelligence may be ant colony optimization. Ant colony optimization mimics a biological process of the movement of simple ants, or we can have particle swarm intelligence or particle swarm optimization, which actually mimics a physical process, the movement of different particles in a space. Okay, so these are some techniques which can be used to achieve artificial intelligence for our programs. Now, nowadays we often use the terms artificial intelligence intelligence and machine learning in the same sentence. We use these terms together. Now let us revisit the relationship between AI and ML. So what is the relationship between AI and ML? Well, on the right hand, on the top right hand side of my screen, there is a photograph of Professor Claude Shannon, an American computer scientist, late 1940s. Can you see him?
Can't able to
Can
see
you,
your presentation, sir.
can you see?
No.
Yes, sir.
Can anybody see my slides?
Yes, sir. We can see.
Okay,
Yes,
so okay. Now, can you see Claude Shannon's photograph?
Yes, sir. We can.
Okay, now can you do you know what is there at the background of that picture? What is behind Claude Shannon? What is that thing between Claude Shannon? Any guess?
That might be.
Yes. What is there behind Claude Shannon? Okay.
Analytical engine.
No, that was not analytical engine. That was a good guess anyway. That was a computer of the late 1940s. In the late 1940s, computers used to be that huge, and there used to be a lot of wiring, and that was a computer of the late 1940s, with which people like Claude Shannon got. Now, in the late 1940s, Claude Shannon wrote a program with artificial intelligence to play chess. So Shannon wrote a program which will be able to play chess. In that program, Shannon was using very simple heuristics. He was using simple rules which will be used to play chess by the computer. And that was more or less a good program. Sometimes the program was able to defeat some human players. Sometimes the program was defeated. And it was quite a good program for 1940s. Okay. But the thing was that the program was using the same level of intelligence every time it was playing a human player. Okay, so today the program will be using the same level of intelligence. Tomorrow again, it knows as only that much. So the human beings will grow, but Shannon's program was intelligent, but its intelligence was not increasing every day. So that was Shannon's work in 1940s. After 10 years, another American scientist, Arthur L. Samuel, wrote a program to play another board game known as the checkers, which is also called draughts. Okay, so Samuel's program also had artificial intelligence. It was also having artificial intelligence. It was using artificial intelligence to play this game. But there was a difference between Shannon's approach and Samuel's approach. Samuel's program was learning new moves from the human players it was playing against. So every time the program was playing against a human opponent, the program was learning new moves from that human player. So the intelligence of that...
Excuse me, sir. Sir, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Your slides are not visible to anyone. No one can see your slides. Can you please start presenting?
Yeah, I was presenting.
Sir, it is not visible.
Okay, ma'am. Let me check again.
Actually, it appears
Sorry,
right side
not
of the screen. Please please click the pin, and then you will get on the screen.
Okay. Stop sharing and present now. Okay. Present now. Okay. Present your entire screen. Okay, I'm just trying. Present your entire screen.
Actually, all participants are requested to pin the screen.
Right.
And what screen presentation is going on.
Yeah, it is on the right side.
Can you see now? Purva ma'am, can you see now?
Sir, actually, all the participants are requested to pin the screen, which you are going to present the
I have done that. Right now, can you see the screen?
No.
No, not
Purva
even.
ma'am, can you see?
Even then I cannot see.
No, you have to pin. There are two names. In his name, you will see one when he is speaking, and the other name,
Yes.
you will see
Yes,
presentation. So on the presentation, you have to click and then you have to pin it. Then you'll be able to see the presentation. In his name, there are two entries.
Yeah, and my name is Pinaki Chakravarti, right?
Yeah.
Can
At the
anybody
other
see?
end, at the
Can
other
anybody-
window, there is presentation. You have to pin that screen so that you are able to see the presentation.
Yeah, it appears on the right side of the computer screen.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
appear in the right side.
Right.
All the participants are requested to pin that particular screen of presentation so that you can see the presentation.
Yeah, on the screen.
Ma'am, can you, Purva ma'am, can you please confirm that you are able to see this presentation?
Yes,
Sir,
sir, we
just
all are able to see.
sir, we are able to see the presentation.
Okay, okay. So okay. So I am continuing with the presentation.
Sir, once 1 minute. If you are not able to pin the screen, kindly listen to Dr. Pinaki sir carefully. We will request him to please share the presentation afterwards so that we
Okay.
can give all participants also.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that after this presentation. I'll share the PPT.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So I'm continuing with the presentation. Okay. Now, so Arthur Samuel's program was learning new moves to play the game Draught. Arthur Samuel's program was trying to learn new moves from the human players against whom it was playing. Okay. So every day the intelligence of the program written by Arthur Samuel was increasing. Okay. So every day the program was becoming more and more intelligent. Right. Now, Arthur Samuel maintained that program on his computer for about 10 years. And he used to call his students, friends, colleagues to play with that program. And after 10 years, it was seen that that program has become extremely intelligent and it was able to defeat almost all human beings. So that is the power of machine learning. Machine learning can help a computer to increase its intelligence. So that is the relationship between AI and ML. ML or machine learning is the process in which a program learns from its experience of performing a task so that it can perform that task more accurately in the future. The term machine learning was coined by Arthur Samuel in the year 1959. Well, we can see that these things, artificial intelligence and machine learning, were present in the 1940s and 50s. That was mainly in the academia. Computer scientists knew this thing, professors knew this thing, but only in this millennium, the masses, the corporates, the masses, the governments started, taking advantage of AI and ML. Before that, it was present, but not many people knew about that. Okay, so only in this millennium, only in the 2010s, people have started, taking use of this AI and ML. And what Professor Pinakinath Jha rightly calls, it is Industrial Revolution 4.0. Okay. Now that was the history. That was history. Now, so what I am doing during this lockdown? So what I am doing here? So I am performing 2 experiments. I'll talk about them one by one in brief. I we do not have much time left. So I have conducted one experiment to detect nomophobia among this COVID-19 lockdown. Now, what is this nomophobia? Nomophobia is an abbreviation. It is a portmanteau for no mobile phone phobia. So nomophobia is the discomfort or anxiety felt by a person because of the non-availability of a mobile phone, or rather a smartphone. So if you're not having your mobile phone with you, you may feel a bit anxious. So that is nomophobia. The term nomophobia was coined in the year 2008, and it was first used in research literature in 2010 when one case study was published from Brazil. Nomophobia is an addiction. It is a non-substance behavioral addiction. Prior studies have found that 17 to 22% users of smartphones suffer from severe form of nomophobia. Okay, and they would benefit from counseling. They will require counseling. No need of medication, but they will require counseling. So we try to, assess the prevalence of nomophobia among our students during this COVID-19 lockdown. So we use two techniques. One is a psychiatry-based technique, and another is a computer science-based technique. Now, what is this psychiatry?
Excuse me.
Psychiatry.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry for interruption.
Please.
Your presentation has stopped. Please start the presentation again. The presentation has stopped.
Where it has stopped? What you can see right now?
We can't see your presentation. The presentation screen is not visible. So if you can again start presentation. Present now. Please click on the present now.
Okay, share entire screen. 1 minute. Present now and share entire screen. To share. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll make it full screen. Okay.
Yeah, now it is.
Okay. Now you can see, Purva ma'am, can you please
Yes, sir.
confirm?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Other participants, please do not present the screen.
Okay. Let me continue. So we used techniques. One is a psychiatry-based technique, and there is a computer science-based technique. The psychiatry-based technique is known as the NMPQ. That is the Nomophobia questionnaire, which is developed by some psychiatrists. Now, this is a questionnaire which determines the dependence of a person on his or her smartphone, and it calculates a score. Okay, more the score, more is the dependence on the smartphone. Apart from that, we developed one Android app. Now this Android app collects data from the phone for the last 7 days, the usage statistics for the last 7 days. We were interested in three things: total usage, how many hours the person has used his or her phone in the last 7 days; nighttime usage, how many hours the user has used the phone in the last 7 days during the unlock frequency, how many times a person is locking and unlocking the phone. So we use these two things: the app which we developed and the NMPQ questionnaire. We shared this app and the questionnaire to 190 undergraduate students in the computer science department of Netaji Subhash University of Technology, New Delhi, on 13th of April 2020. And we received a response from 111 students. We got this data, we got this usage data and the smartphone dependence data. We collected this data and we performed statistical tests and also applied some AI-based techniques on the data. Here is my results. Well, the mean age of those respondents was about 20 years. The ratio was quite skewed. Most of our students are male. I do not know what is exactly the reason, but that's the truth. Okay, and using the NMPQ questionnaire, that is the psychiatry-based method, we calculated the different levels of nomophobia among the students. We found that 12.6% of the students were severely nomophobic. But that is not the point of my concern. I'm not concerned about the 12.6% of the students who are severely nomophobic, because that is the worldwide trend. Okay. I am more concerned about the 78.4% students who are moderately nomophobic. That is the matter of concern. That a large number of students, a large percentage of our population is moderately nomophobic. Now, how much people were using their phones? 7 days, the students were using phones for 57.1 hours on an average. And a major portion of this use was during the night time. Students were using their phones during the night time. Okay. And the students were also using, also locking and unlocking their phones quite frequently. We calculated correlation between the psychiatric measure and the computer science-based measure, we found weak but statistically significant correlation between the NLPQ score and the total phone usage. Okay. We also found a statistically significant correlation between NMPQ score and lifetime phone usage. However, no statistically significant correlation was found between phone unlock frequency and NMPQ score. So this means that if a person is feeling more nomophobic, then he or she will be using his or her phone more, and if someone is using the phone more, then he or she will be, feeling more nomophobic. Now, till now, everything was statistics. Till here, everything is statistics. It is simple SPSS statistics. Now we use AI. We use AI to perform risk assessment. Let us find out the students who are at high risk. Okay, so we use K-means clustering technique, a simple AI-based technique, and we found that some 18.9% students are at high risk. 18.9 students are at high risk. Although statistics told us that only 12.6% students were having severe nomophobia. But using AI, we are able to find more students who are moderated nomophobic, but still they are at high risk because perhaps they are using phone more at the night. They are unlocking and locking the phone again and again. So I'm concerned about this 18.9% students who are who are at high risk of addiction towards mobile phones. Okay, now coming to my next experiment, it is about detecting binge tweeting amid this lockdown. Now, most of us use some form of Web 2.0 website. Many of us are active on Facebook, social, Twitter, etc. The moderate use of social media can help people psychologically, but an obsessive use of social media is often counterproductive. It has been observed, empirical studies has confirmed that people who are lonely, shy, introvert in their real lives are often using social media more addictively. That is a matter of concern. Addictive use of social media is often associated with mental health symptoms such as anxiety and depression. So what we try to do is that we try to identify the addictive use of Twitter among Indian people during these lockdowns. Okay, so we scrapped tweets from the Twitter using Python. We were tweeting, we were scrapping tweets with emotion-related hashtags like emotions like happy, sad, unhappy, angry, frustrated, like this. We were considering tweets only from India, and we were considering tweets only during the first phase and the second phase of the lockdown. Now with this, we got a lot of tweets. We collected a lot of tweets, and after that we are doing two types of analysis. Number one is as a risk analysis, again using K-means clustering. Here we are using the number of tweets posted in the night time, number of tweets posted in the 3 most active days, etc. as the attributes. Association of emotion and usage pattern we would like to do. We haven't done this yet. We are doing this. Okay, so I have only the results for risk assessment using K-means clustering. Let us see that. Well, in total, we were able to collect 7,688 tweets, and these tweets came from 222 users, and people were not much angry or surprised or afraid about this lockdowns. We found that, but initially more people were happy about the lockdowns. Perhaps people were happy that they have not to go to their colleges, or they have not to go to their offices, or they were happy with the government for taking some proactive steps. But in the second lockdown, less people were happy and more people were becoming sad, because by that time, bad news started trickling in everywhere. People were getting infected, there were casualties. So number of people who were happy decreased, and number of people who were sad increased from the first phase of the lockdown to the second phase of the lockdown. Now, again, we used AI, that is K-means clustering algorithm to perform risk assessment. Let us find out the students who, these are not students, these are Twitter users. So let us find out the people who are at more risk. So we found that we use the elbow technique. There is a method called elbow method. And using that elbow method, we found that we can have 4 clusters. So we have not with the algorithm has divided the users into 4 clusters, namely cluster 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the people in the first and the second cluster are okay. They are having normal or frequent usage patterns at Twitter. But there are about 16%, more than 16% people who are either showing addictive or heavily addictive behavior on Twitter. Okay, so there are about more than 16% people who are, who are spending a lot of time on Twitter. They are, they are putting a large number of tweets. They are tweeting at the night time. So this is a matter of concern. Okay, so if some 60% people are, addicted to Twitter, then it is not a very good thing. And the people who are highly, who are highly addictive were approximately posting 43 tweets per day. So that is a matter of concern. So from this, I have some simple conclusions. I like to draw these simple conclusions. During this lockdown and also in the post-COVID era, we'll be using digital technologies like phones, internet, social media, etc. More than ever before. We'll be doing more online shopping. We'll be ordering more food, online. So these things will happen, but there is a flip side of technology. Again, I invoke Professor Jha. So there is a flip side of technology. So this digital technology can become addictive. My concern, my results, my experiments say that during this lockdown, a large proportion of our population, Indian population, the normal Twitter users, a large proportion of them are becoming moderately addicted. There are some severely addicted people already, but more people are becoming, the normal people are becoming moderately addictive. That is a matter of concern for me. Now here comes the role of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence may be used to detect the use of digital technologies in the post-COVID era, and AI can find those people who are, who are addicted to these technologies, and the affected people, the addicted people, may be recommended counseling. Simple psychiatric counseling, will help these people, and AI can find out those people. So that is my conclusion. Well, this is my ongoing work. I have been able to publish one research paper in a good journal. If you are interested in this topic, please read my paper. It has been already published. In the coming few months, we will be publishing more papers on this topic. You are free to read and do more work on this topic also. And I am grateful to one of my PhD students, Ms. Anshika Arora, who is actually conducting these experiments. So that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Sharing your valuable words. Looking forward, I feel sorry to inform all of you. We tried our best to connect with our second resource person, Mr. Samrat Paul, but currently he is in Kolkata. Due to Amphan cyclone, we are not getting the connectivity with him. We will try to, we tried a lot, but we are not getting the connectivity. Now looking forward, we will start with the question answer session. Now I hand over this session to Dr. Aditya Gupta, sir. Sir, please.
Good evening, Dr. Aditya Gupta. I'm very much want to clear that if some person present their own screen between the presentation, your screen will be lost. That perhaps that may be one of the reason to loss of the screen. Anyway, for the question answer session, I have received 2 more important questions and one from my side. I'm audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. One of my viewer, Dr. Gaurav Shah, want to know how to collect tweets beyond the Twitter limit, that is 3,200 tweets. can AI help in it? This was the question from Dr. Gaurav Shah, one of our viewers.
Okay, I'll answer that. Well, this is a very good question. Now, the AI has nothing to do with this. This is done by the API of Twitter. Okay, the good thing about Twitter is that it actually allows the tweets to be downloaded. Most other social media platforms do not even allow that. But yes, there are strict restrictions on the number of tweets which can be scrapped during a period of time. So that is a bottleneck. That is why we had only a few thousands of tweets. Otherwise, we could have also had lakhs of tweets. So you have to use those tweets judiciously. You have to check for tweets only from the relevant hashtags. So AI cannot help you in that.
Okay, thank you, sir. One of my students, our students, I think Ayush Jaiswal, his question: what are the various areas where AI can be used? I am extending this question. What are the various areas as in the job point of view available in India in the AI and machine learning fields?
Okay, that's a beautiful question, Ayush. Well, nowadays AI is used practically in all domains. Okay, it is used in almost all domains. You do not actually need AI in all domains. You see nowadays, you see advertisement. My air conditioner is having AI. Okay, so you do not need AI in every domain, but people claim to be using AI everywhere. But more as I was saying, from the job point of view, AI can be used in different domains. It can be used in consumer in electronics. It can be used for data analysis. It can be used for robotics. It can be used for data analysis. Computational economics. It can be used because you are in management university, so that is why I'm telling you. So you can use AI in the field of analyzing commercial and economic based data. So if you have any data, especially if the data is large, especially if the data is imprecise, okay, you can use AI. And now when I say data can be anything. Data can be numerical data. Data can be in the form of text. Okay, you can mine text. Okay, data can be images. Data can be video. You can do video surveillance using AI. You can identify photographs using AI. So again, AI can be used in medical informatics also. You can just your program can go through the medical reports of a patient and give the doctor some suggestion. Okay, help the doctor diagnose the disease. So AI has a lot of scope. Ayush, you try to find out a good domain for yourself and do good research.
Okay, sir. One last question.
Please.
What type of courses and organizations are available in India you can suggest for our students to join the AI and machine learning courses?
Okay, so can you brief me? What programs these students are as of now attending? They are doing MBA.
Yeah, they are undergraduate BCA and MCA students, most of them. Some of them MBA also and PGDM also.
Okay, sure. So basically, you have students from both computer background, that is BCA, MCA, and you have management students also. Now, if we are studying BCA and MCA, then I think that you do not need to go for anything outside your institute, because in your curriculum there will be at least two courses on AI or ML or things like that. In your syllabus, maybe in the final semesters, final and the pre-final semesters. So when I studied BTech many years back, at the time I studied AI in my college only. Okay, so if you are a BCA, MCA, BTech or MTech student, then please listen to your professors. They will be talking about AI in the classroom only. In any case, if you're a management student or if you want to learn more, then there are a lot of good MOOC courses, that is online courses on AI and ML. Okay, AI and ML, you are free to attend those. You just visit Coursera, you just visit edX. There is a large number of AI. AI is a very broad field. It's a very broad field. What exactly you are trying to do in AI? Are you trying to do a computational economic, or you are trying to do robotics, or you are trying to do image processing? So you can choose a particular course according to that. And of course, there is a book by Rich and that is a journal on AI, which I studied, when I had no hairs on my head. Okay, so I would recommend young students to read the book on AI, Rich and Knight.
Okay, thank you, sir. This is a nice explanation of the queries. And from my side, that is this. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your consent.
Okay.
Due to time constraint, we can't take all the questions. Now I would like to request Mr. Anand Prakash Dubey, sir, to give concluding remark of today's webinar. Sir, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Pura Madam, for giving me this opportunity to say something on the topic which we have taken today under this webinar. We had two speakers, but due to some reason which were beyond our control, one of our speaker, he couldn't join to us, but the speaker who take over the session today, Dr. Pinaki Chakravarti, I don't have enough word to say thanks to him, because he has explained the AI and machine learning in such a lucid and easy language, so that everyone can easily understand what basically AI and ML is. Because some of the students, they are from the management stream, so it becomes buzzword for them what is basically AI and how it is going to help us in our daily life. It is something which is maybe related to the persons who are in the technical field. It's not for us. But sir has very rightly said that even the management students, they can also use some tools to incorporate into the industry, so that they can diagnose certain patterns. They have to work on some data, and the data is really unpredictable. What kind of data we are having nowadays? It is not only the text data, it is not only the video, it is not only the audio. Lot of informations are there in the form of data. So we are not only have to collect the data, but also we have to present the data in a form so that it gives some meaning to us, so that we can take some decision. So for a future manager, it is very important for you all to understand how AI can help you in your future endeavor. Now, as the topic of the webinar, you all know that we had to talk on the relevance of AI and machine learning in post-COVID era. Technology, we are studying since our childhood that it has two facets basically. One is good, one is bad. But we must be knowing both the facets, because it is equally important to know the bad part of it, so that we can avoid using that part. And we have to make it for the blessing purpose. So technology should be used for the blessing purpose and not for the curse. Now I have certain findings, certain things to discuss with all of the participants here. Now, when we talk of AI, in the outset of this program, our Honorable Director Sir, Professor P.N. Jha has very rightly said that not only he, but every one of us has some fear in our mind that will AI replace human being intelligence, and we will stop thinking by our own, and we will leave each and everything on the machine. Just you do this task for me, you take decision, you help in decision making, and we will be just becoming robots. And I had just studied in some article that nowadays human beings are stuck and machines are learning. Yes, machines must learn, but we should not be stuck. We should also develop some skill and improve our skill, and we should not be static, because we are the human being. We have got real intelligence. So I don't think the computer can ever supersede to us, but we should always be creative. We should always be providing some information to the computer, and computer should also learn, because there's a concept of heuristic. We all have studied in the AI subject that there's a concept called heuristic, which means ability to learn with experiences. So the human being, we always learn something with our experiences. So machines should also be fed some kind of experiences, because so far we are referring machine as a dumb terminal, but machines will no more be dumb terminal in days to come, and it will be taking some decision by its own, as Professor Pinaki has rightly said, and he has worked also onto different areas, like he has explained the concept of nomophobia and Bing tweeting. In his work, he has done marvelous thing, and he has come up with some solutions also, that yes, the people who are addicted to the mobile phones nowadays, we are finding the teenagers and the youngsters, they are wasting their precious time in using mobile phone. And if you find very seriously that how productive work, how much productive work they are doing, you will find that 10 to 15% work is productive, but most of the work, they are highly unproductive. And if not only that, but they are also creating some problem to their health too. So it should be brought to their notice that you are in which zone. You are in danger zone, you are at high risk or moderate risk or low risk. So if I get to know that I am at high risk, definitely it will think to my mind that I should avoid using mobile phone up to this extent. So similarly, he has discussed very effectively about Bing tweeting, that we should avoid tweeting all the time. Social net, okay, it's very good thing to connect socially, but there should be a limitation. So excess of everything is bad. It has been said earlier by so many people, and we know that if we devote a lot of time into these things, then definitely our intelligence will be affected, and will behave like a machine, not like a human being. And what about machine learning? Machine learning today is not like machine learning of the past. It was born from pattern recognition and the theory that computer can learn without being programmed to perform a specific task. Researchers interested in artificial intelligence wanted to see if computers could learn from data. The iterative aspect of machine learning is important, because as models are exposed to new data, they are able to independently adapt. While many machine learning algorithms have been around for a long time, the ability to automatically apply complex mathematical calculations to big data over and over, faster and faster, in a recent development. I would like to mention here some widely published examples of machine learning application we all are familiar with. It would definitely help some of the participants who are students. The heavily hyped self-driving Google car, you might have heard. It is nothing but it is the essence of machine learning. Second example could be thought of like online recommendation offers, such as those from Amazon and Netflix. Here machine learning applications are used for everyday life. If you suppose you are purchasing some item from Amazon or some other sites, it gives you the purchasing habit, and next time when you log on to that particular site, it will give you some offers by that particular organization. That all comes under the data analytics, and it is also somehow related to this machine learning. Now, knowing what customers are saying about you on Twitter, perhaps very rightly taken the example of Twitter, but this is some other dimension of that. Knowing that what customers are saying about you on Twitter, here machine learning combines the linguistic rule creation, and also most importantly, the other applications may be in fraud detection. It is one of the more obvious uses in our world today. So in the last, I can just say that yes, machines should be learning, but we should not stop learning. We should use our intelligence here and always supersede to the machines. Yes, definitely, maybe a helping hand for all of us, because doctors are also using it. The intelligentsia, the knowledge base should be accumulated, should be combined, should be piled, but whenever we need it, because everyone is not expert in every domain. So if I am a doctor, I have certain knowledge about a particular disease, I can feed some data, I can feed some information into the machine, and suppose I dies of age problem or any way, and some people who have collected my data, my information, they can use this data for the human beings to help them to diagnose their problem, to diagnose their illness, and give the remedial solution, give them the remedy for that particular, to handle that particular situation. So there are infinite domains, and certain new domains are also being searched for, and it will be identified very in days to come, very nearly, in very near days, that we would identify that yes, machine learning and artificial intelligence, they are working with all together to help the human beings. This is all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand sir, for your concluding remark. Now I would like to request Dr. Kamal Shiv Mishra sir to deliver vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Really, it was a very interesting, very informative, and very practical webinar. I wish that the program must continue, but we have time constraint, and we are about to close this webinar. But really, I am very much thankful to Dr. Pinaki sir for giving this deliberation in a nice way, and very practical and in a very simple way to present the things. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your reviews, or sharing your thoughts, or sharing your presentations. I'm also thankful to the management, our director sir, our registrar sir, for always motivating me to present this kind of webinar and giving me all support. I'm equally thankful to all my team members, the computer science department, especially Dr. Purva, Dr. Amitabh ji, Mr. Ramgopal Gupta ji, for taking all the technical aspects of this webinar. And lastly, this program would have not been taken this shape unless all the participants. One time I had seen that more than 225 participants logged in. So without their presence, it was not possible to make this webinar a grand success. Lastly, I am thankful to all for being with us. Thank you all. Over to.
And now I want to mention my sincere thanks to Dr. Kamal sir for always motivating us and organizing such a wonderful webinars. Thank you, sir. Now it's time to conclude. I declare that the webinar is ended. I wish all the participants be happy and be safe. Once again, I remind all the participants, kindly fill the feedback form. The link is given in the chat box so that you can get the e-certificates. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope we will meet in the next webinar very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely, we will meet.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. Happy evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Hope we will meet soon for conducting this type of webinar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have to leave the meeting, or we have to do anything else?
You can leave the meeting.
Yeah, because yeah.
Thank you.
Now I will request Ramgopal sir to stop the recording and terminate the session.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
हेलो, थैंक यू मैम। नेक्स्ट वेबिनार की सूचना मेल आईडी पर अगर सेंड किया जाए तो बहुत ही कृपा होगी आप लोगों की।
Okay, we'll try that. Thank you.